Hello, science people. It's Mr. Gattel here. Today we're going to use what is called the I-square strategy to help us figure out what information is being presented in graphs and data tables and pictures in science. So, have you ever looked at a graph or a figure and felt overwhelmed by it? Often there is lots of information on graphs and in figures in science. And so this I-squared strategy is a way to just help us make sense of these things, these graphs and figures and sketches. And what it does is it will help us break down the information into smaller, more manageable parts. So to do this, we're going to do two things. We're going to begin by kind of looking at our graph. So I have a graph in front of you, and we're going to look for places that look interesting. And we're going to make observations. We have talked about this word observations. Today we're using our eyes to make observations about this line graph. Then once we have made our observations, we're going to try to infer the meaning of those observations by looking at the information on the graph itself. So, how does this I-squared strategy work? First, we need to look for places on this graph in this line that look interesting to us. It can be any place in the line here that looks interesting, and you're just going to, for example, I'm going to say this part of the line looks interesting. So I'm going to write an arrow, and I'm going to make that a little thinner. I'm going to write this. This is the first I. It's what I see. I'm just going to interpret that. W-I-S. And when I write W-I-S, what I see, I am only going to make an observation. Again, remember, you are just making an observation. You're not inferring any meaning from this yet. So what I see the line goes down. And I can say gradually. Compared to the rest of this, it's pretty gradual. Okay, so that's one W-I-S, what I see. Maybe another place, I don't want to give you this information here. Maybe another place is right here. And what I see. Well, I see the line goes down sharply. Okay, so you can make a whole bunch of these what I sees by looking all over this graph, right? All over. You can see it goes up here, and the blue line goes down here. The blue line goes down sharply here. Okay, now the next step after we write our what I sees, we're going to try to interpret those what I sees. And again, remember, when we interpret an observation, that is an inference. So we can look at the graph to help us start interpreting. The title up here, more likely to feel lonely. And it says, percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders who agree or mostly agree with the statement, I often feel left out of things, or a lot of times I feel lonely. And so we have two different lines being represented here. I often feel left out of things. That's in black. And a lot of times I feel lonely. That's in blue. So if we're looking at our what I sees from the black line only, well, we can go up here and we can see that on our y-axis, this is our y-axis. The way that I remember that is a y has an up and down like that. This is our x-axis. And so we already know this is not a well-labeled graph, but we have seen up here that percentage of 8th graders who agree or mostly agree. And so these are percentages right here on the y-axis, right? And even though this is not labeled we can pretty confidently, I think, infer that these are years, given 1991 to 2015. All right. So now we kind of know what we're looking at in this graph. We're looking at percentages by year and how those percentages change, those percentages of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders who agree with these statements, how that changes over time. So anytime we have a change over time, we use a line graph like this. And so let's go to our first WIS, what I see. The line goes down gradually here. Okay, so your second step, I'll change the color here. Your second step, let's make it blue, would be to write what it means, or WIM. So what does it mean? Well, we see the line is going down gradually. It's a black line, so it's the percentage of students who say they often feel left out. It does go down gradually between the years 1991 and probably it's about 2000 here, right? So we know that between 1991 and the year 2000, something happened. Well, what happened? As the line is going down, we can see that it's going from 30% on the y-axis down to about 26%. So what does that mean? Well, it means between 1991 and 2000, the percentage of students, and I'm going to make this messy, I'm sorry, who said, this is why you need to give yourself lots of room when you're doing this. They often feel left out. Went from 30% to 26%. Okay, so that's just one example of a WIS, what I see, which is your observation, and a WIM, what it means, which is your inference or your meaning to that observation. The more we practice this, the better we will get. Eventually we're going to add down at the bottom, and not today, but eventually we will add a part where you're going to just summarize all the WIS and WIMs that you have on your graph into like a paragraph. And eventually, what we're working towards toward the end of the year is where you're not going to write the WIS, WIM at all. You're just going to be able to look at a graph or a set of data, and you're going to do that in your head. You're going to do the WIMs in your head, and you're going to be able to write a summary down here. But that's what we're going for. Today, we're just doing the WIS, WIM practice.